Now, our first speaker is without a doubt one of the most informative individuals. When George Horn writes an article for the review, inevitably the girl who does our editing in the magazine says, "Oh, this will raise some comment. This will cause a reaction." And this is what's great about George's writings. He doesn't ask you ever to agree with him. All he asks you to do is to think, question, and even demand an answer. But the most important thing is thinking, and in thinking, you are bettering the breed. When I asked George to give me a couple of things about his past life, he wrote 6 pages, which I edited down to a half a paragraph. But the most items things to see his background, George very nicely says, and quite humbly puts, our highlights would have to include best of breed of the Collie Club of America in 1967 with Breezalong. Best of breed of the Collie Club of America in 1976 with Indelibly Blue. Breed of the Year 1968 and the Ken Memorial Sweepstakes with Champion High Ground, the African Queen in 1973. Ladies and gentlemen, meet a wonderful individual and a wonderful contributor to our breed, George Horn.
Thank you, Murray. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I feel as though I could fit into the shoes a little bit of what Murray had to say about Mr. Gray. At least I can fit the part that's pompous and opinionated. I don't know about the lovable part. Murray keeps telling me I'm pompous and opinionated. And that wasn't 6 pages I gave you, Murray. It was 6 paragraphs. Of course, you only asked for 2. The topic that I'd like to speak to you on today, and I have to get my watch out here, it's marked in 2 places. It's marked in the 20 minutes that Murray said I could have and the 45 that Barbara said I could have.
Thank you, George.
And the 2.5 hours that I figured I could really blow away if I tried. But the topic that I've chosen, and I think is particularly apropos, is then and now, 35 plus years in college, because that's how long this gray-haired old guy's been around. Seemed appropriate to do this topic at Collie College, because over the years, these get-togethers meant a great deal to me and to so many other people. Get-togethers that were both a learning process as well as a social get-together. I've got a lot of memories from Collie College. Can't remember all of them, but I jotted down a few that I considered particular highlights. The talk that Dr. Harvey gave up here relative to reproductive problems. And it came particularly home to me because years ago we lost a couple of awfully good collie bitches, Champion Greg Shire's Little Honeycomb and Yankee Doodle Waiting Game, with problems with pyrometria, having to have them spayed. Dr. Harvey's talk really did a lot of good for us. He stressed the need for cleanliness when bitches are in heat. He stressed the need to trim the britches and the tail to keep those nice sticky hairs from making problems. He stressed a couple other things that I had never even thought about, like how natural it was to breed a bitch anytime she had a normal season, rather than skipping a season or breeding 2 out of 3 or whatever, which we had formerly done. And probably most important of all, he stressed exercise, exercise, exercise. They need to be lean and hard. And the things he talked about that day many years ago are still absolutely pertinent today. And you should all be asking yourselves whether or not your dogs in general get enough exercise, and particularly when you have bitches in heat. Are they getting enough exercise, or do you have them slapped away in a crate somewhere? Because that's the worst place in the world for them to be. I remember distinctly a talk that Edith Levine gave, not so much for her talk, but for Edith's normal, forthright conversation. When she walked into Collie College, situated in the heart of Gaylord Brandwin country, and prefaced her talk with this statement that was heard round the world. Before I start my talk, you must know that Trudy Mangles did not invent the goddamn collie. I will never forget it as long as I live. A hush fell over the crowd. She definitely got their attention. I remember Brian Carabine, the Collie Club of Long Island's personal leprechaun, with his stirring rendition of the Irish ass race. And I won't tell it. Somebody else may be able to, but when Brian gave his rendition of the Irish ass race, there might have been a few raised eyebrows in the beginning, but there were a bunch of tear-streaked faces at the end because he was so funny. God, how I miss it. Later, I was privileged to be invited to speak at Collie College. And it's interesting and absolutely timely when you're speaking about then and now. It's interesting the things I used to be invited to speak about, the things I speak about now. I used to speak about stud dogs. We were lucky, we had a couple good ones. I used to speak about grooming, probably a tribute to how well my New Jersey water made the dogs look. Used to speak about show training, because my wife did such a hell of a good job of breaking puppies. Nowadays, I seem to be talking an awful lot about some phase of then and now. As nearly as I can determine, this metamorphosis took place about when my hair started to turn gray. And I'm going to have to talk to some of these people with their newfangled grooming arrangements to see if I can't turn it back brown. I guess my biggest concern is that with Alzheimer's disease setting in, my failing memory may render it impossible for me to talk about the then, and I'll only have the now left, and there's not a hell of a lot of demand for that. But when you compare aspects of a dog game over the years, over 35, 40 years or whatever, there's a lot of things you can look at. A recent symposium that I spoke at up in Michigan, we compared a number of things, including feeding, transportation, literature, kenneling, dog shows, grooming and handling, judges, dog people, dogs. And while the comparisons were very general, the basic feeling was that in most areas we were ahead of the game. We were better than we used to be. We certainly seemed to be so in transportation. In the old days, people used to go to dog shows in damn trains. Okay, I mean, that's how you got to dog shows. And then we moved on to station wagons, motorhomes. Now we fly in airplanes, you know. Certainly seems that we got the best of it in transportation. Literature, we've got more books and magazines. I'm not going to say whether they're better. I'm not going to say whether the writers are better, because I didn't used to write, and now I do write, so things are deteriorating a little bit there. Kenneling, I guess the only thing I think about when it comes to kenneling, and there are certainly modern aspects of kenneling that some people have taken advantage of, but every time I think about kenneling, I think about two things. I think about Steve Fields' kenneling, and the fact that if ever I saw an al natural kennel set up, that was it, and yet this guy produced great dogs year after year after year after year. And I think about Isabel Butler's statement about kenneling, that she generally found that after a certain point, the quality of the kenneling, as it increased, seemed to go hand in hand with the quality of the dogs as it decreased. If you spend too much of your time and effort in making the kennel too fancy, sometimes it seems as though some people forget about what the hell it was put there for, which is breed better dogs. Dog shows, we've got more. They're bigger. The disappearance of the bench show certainly has been no benefit. Grooming and handling, I think we certainly see dogs that are better groomed and better handled than when we started with regards to the grooming aspect of it. I guess I consider there's a side effect of that. We have people now that are more muscular. They have to be to carry those big damn grooming kits with all that crap they put on the dogs. Skinny little guy like me couldn't show a dog anymore today.
That was then.
Judges, I don't think a whole lot has really changed. We've still got good ones and we've still got bad ones. We used to have good ones and we used to have bad ones. And I guess the place where I see the biggest difference in that is, good judges have bad days and bad judges have good days. The only difference is good judges know the difference. Bad ones really don't. And people. I want to share with you a little bit about people before I get into talking about a little bit about the pillars of the breed. I'll talk about some people who someday, if not already, may be considered pillars of the breed. I want to talk to you about some of the fun that I had over the years showing collies back in this bastion of colliedom known as the Eastern United States. And like everyone else, we had to crawl before we could walk and walk before we could run. And we encountered a lot of nifty, interesting people. Janet, you're just sitting right there staring up at me. I'll tell you a little bit about Janet. One of the indomitable trio. Janet kind of came sneaking in on the scene some years ago. My recollection of Janet is she just kind of showed up one day like a mushroom with a dog she had brought from Trudy, and everybody kind of looked around and there was Janet. There was a dog. And a little bit at a time, Janet kind of did her homework. Janet kept doing better and better. We probably used to think Janet's buying these dogs at Trudy's, and we know she isn't buying them cheap. Matter of fact, we used to figure that every time Janet bought a dog from Trudy, Trudy had enough money to go buy 2 horses. But after a while, Janet started getting pretty damn competitive, and you should start knocking the rest of us off every once in a while. Then she started knocking Trudy off every once in a while. Then she started knocking Trudy off fairly regularly, and then Trudy moved to Arizona. So any of you guys want to know why Trudy left, it's Janet's fault. But the real problem with Janet was when she got hooked up with Les and Vernon. I got to tell you about this trio. Because you see, they've really got it down pat. And the big secret I'm going to tell you is about Vernon. That's going to come last. And particularly because she's not here, I can really zap her. But Janet is the one that meanders around the ring and gets you all involved in a good bullcrap conversation so that Les can go in there with a dog and beat your brains out. And you think Verna's really not doing anything because Verna's sitting nice and sweetly at the ringside with a catalog, right? And you figure all she's doing is watching the dogs. Wrong. Verna's got the voodoo doll. Whoever is perceived as the largest competition for whatever Les is showing that day, Janet's over there bullshitting to them, trying to make sure they don't have time to groom their dogs. And just in case they got somebody that is grooming the dog and getting it ready, Verna's got the voodoo doll. And she's sticking pins. You don't have a chance against those two. But they've been good fun over the years. And then, of course, sitting directly behind Janet, Bobby, and Shelley. Now, I remember the first time I can recall meeting the Ruses. They had just moved east, stopped by our place, and you had Midnight Star with you, as I recall. and I had been reading about you folks and your dogs. And I thought, gee, these are nice folks. They've migrated from out in the great West. They've come here to this hotbed of collie activity in the East. Nice folks, husband, wife, cute young daughter, nice old dog, no danger to anybody. He's an old dog. You could see he was a good dog, but old dogs at that point in time didn't scare me because I was into young dogs who would go out and win in a show ring. Unfortunately, they weren't content to just have that old dog. They kind of started sneaking up on we folks back here in the East, and they brought out younger dogs. That's when I started to really get worried. The reveilles, and the war dances, and the Rapunzels. Then I started hearing something about a damn dog called Whisk Broom or Sweeper or something. Didn't really know what the hell people were talking about until I went down to a specialty that Lou Carpenter was judging, and I damn well found out what they were talking about. They have a way of using their talents to whip you too. You see, of course, back in those days, Shelley was just a little kid. George would take you off to the side and invite you to have a couple drinks, while Bobby was back there getting the dog ready to whip your buns, and Shelley was just charming your eyes out. You know, all these people use psychology, they're tricky. And then there's Buddy. Where the hell are you, John? Oh yeah. I was thinking flying out here the stages that we went through with John. You know, first John was that, who's that skinny little kid who came to the show with his father? Oh, that was stage one. He was innocuous. He was absolutely safe. He wasn't bothering anybody. He was just a little kid. He graduated from that to, who the hell's that kid that's following Pat Shryock all over the place? That was the next stage. Third stage was, who's that kid that co-owns that dog with Pat that she's showing today? Coming right along. Next stage was, who's that damn kid that owns that dog that beat me today? Then we got into the four-letter words, John, when you started to beat us with some degree of regularity. But it's amazing how these people come along and you learn about them. Swartz. I don't even want to get into you. You're the only person I ever had run up to kiss me after taking your best of breed, and I was sweating so hard you slid off on the floor. Swartz is a nutsy-fruitsy. But the reason all of us lay these plans and do all these things and work so hard is that someday, when our days on earth are over, we can arrive at the pearly gates and be greeted by Murray Drucker and Ralph Morrison saying, "You've been elected." That's what we all look forward to. About some of the great people that have been in Collies in the past, and I'll go back more than 35 or 40 years, but I've got just a rundown of some of them here, and some you should be familiar with, maybe all of them. The J.P. Morgans and the Hunters and the Wernsmans, Clara Lunt, Mrs. Ilch, Ed Pickard, Van Dyke, Halpin and Castleman, the Kems, Steve Field, Gus Segrets, Mrs. Browning, the Beresfords, Dorothy Long, Dr. and Mrs. McCain. You think about these people, and they're basically people that a lot of you only read about. Some of us knew them, or at least knew some of them. And you think about what they were to the breed. Some bought great dogs and exhibited them. Some were known as breeders more than exhibitors. The Kems didn't show. But one and all, they moved the breed forward. And they had dogs that, while they, as individuals, didn't shine perhaps as long as the people did, when those dogs were around, their stars shone very brightly. Dogs like Magnet. Now, Magnet has always fascinated me because they tell me that Magnet is behind all the show collies in the United States, which leads me to believe that while on one hand he may be a wonderful individual, on the other hand, he's got a bunch of damn problems. I mean, obviously, he's got to have subluxation problems somewhere. He's got to have gray factor somewhere. He's got the collie eye problem, and he's certainly got PRA kicking around there too. Now, you know, this dog, you take the bitter with the sweet, I guess, guys, but if he's back there, we got to say he started an awful lot of trouble. But anyhow, the dogs like Magnet, Seedley, Sterling, Future of Arkin, Bellhaven, Black Lucas, Sterling Star Mist, Honeybrook Big Parade, Hurtsville, however, Lodestone Landmark, Silver Hope Raider, Chervale Checkmate, Tacallan Stormcloud, Poplar Bolt, Golden Opportunity, Cadet and Miranda, Canebrook Honeychild, all these dogs go with the people that I just talked about. And they had others. Whether you're comparing dogs or whether you're comparing people, it gets a little bit tricky to compare people today with people of the past, because you always leave somebody out, and the somebody that you left out is generally who the person sitting behind you thinks you should have put in. But I think it's relevant to think about the people of the past and the people of today. Think about the changes that have taken place in how we do what we do. And not only where do we find ourselves, but where should we be based on the changes, based on the advantages, based on the things that we've got better today than we had years ago. We know, because we've all heard it over and over again, that the big kennels are pretty much a thing of the past. And initially that caused everybody a great deal of concern. I'm not sure it causes everybody as much concern now as it did, because we've got people who are being adaptable enough to do something about that. We have not big single kennels anymore, but we have people that are teaming together to perhaps give us the same thing. Several breeders that are breeding a line of dogs collectively. In some cases, they are located close to each other. In some cases, they're some distance apart. And while your first thought would be that these people are going to have a problem because it's so hard for any two people to agree on things, they seem to be overcoming that, and it gives them certain advantages. It gives them the advantage of sending dogs from one place to another in the country, so that those dogs have a better chance to be used if it's stud dogs. It gives them a chance to have their dogs shown in different areas of the country. It gives them a chance to use the particular talents of different people within the co-op, if that's a good name. Some of us are better at whelping and raising puppies, some of us are better at training and showing and grooming, so on and so forth. There's been a lot of discussion over the years about, and most of it has been a little bit negative about some of the people that are in dogs today, about what the difference is between people that are in dogs today and people that got in dogs some time ago. And understand we're generalizing, because my feeling is that in any generation of dog breeders, the cream will come to the top. There are going to be those who, if we have a symposium here 30 or 35 years from now, we'll be talking about in the same breath as some of these people that I just mentioned. The cream will rise to the top, but there are differences, okay? And one of the things that I found in reading a book a few weeks ago, and a book of all things was about baseball, it really gave me something to think about that relates to dogs. But let me share this with you. I don't know how much any of you know about baseball, but this particular book was the summer of '49. It dealt with a pennant race between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. That's not the important thing. The important thing is one little section that I read in there. And the section was discussing baseball players of today and baseball players back in that time frame, 49, you're talking 40 years ago. And it agreed that baseball players today are generally better physical specimens, they're better fed, they've got all these marvelous bits of equipment they can use for training purposes, they're better educated, All of those good things they've got going for them, just like we've got better means of transportation, better feed, this and that and everything. But in spite of that, it questioned whether or not the baseball players of today were as good as the baseball players back then because of one basic difference. And the basic difference was this. The players back then did their traveling by train, in the large part, and they lived together, they ate together, they played cards together, and the topic of conversation was baseball. Batting averages, how to hit a curveball, how to pitch, how to field, how to run the bases. That's what they lived, ate, and breathed. And the term that they used that I think is a particularly apropos term to what we're talking about is that these men were students of the game. Now the baseball player of today, while the very best ones, I assure you, are students of the game because it means a great deal to them, the baseball players of today are faced with a great many distractions that those fellows were not faced with. They've got a more frantic schedule. They fly from city to city. They've got agents. They've got contracts to do commercials. They've got their stockbroker that they have to talk to, trying to figure out how they're going to try to keep all these millions that they're making. It's an entirely different game. They don't spend nearly as much time with the game of baseball. And I suggest to you that this is very similar in many ways to the dog breeder of today compared to the dog breeder of years ago. There is a lot more available. There is a lot more to distract the dog breeder of today than the dog breeder of years ago. There's all kinds of good things. And it makes it more difficult to be a student of the game. Now this doesn't mean that all breeders are shallow and frivolous and skipping merely from one interest to another. It just means that perhaps it's a little bit tougher. We live in an age, and I've said this before, of instant things. From instant mashed potatoes to TV to telephone to air travel to fax machines, calculators, computers, what have you. This age of instant things runs counter to the need for patience and its bedfellow experience. They're not considered all that important in an instant world. When you compare the time it takes to learn what's necessary to be successful as a breeder of good dogs and compare it to how long it takes to learn how to doctor a mediocre dog, I think you can understand some of the problems that we face. If you just wish to have a good time, to do some showing and winning, you don't need to invest a lot of time and effort. Someone else can breed the dog for you. Someone can show you how to groom it and show it, or for a price they can do that for you. And somewhere there are probably enough judges to finish it if it's not too damn ugly. If that's what you want, hey, go for it. If on the other hand you aspire to contribute to be a positive force in this breed, and maybe someday to have your name mentioned with a degree of reverence in a gathering such as this, I suggest, if you haven't done so already, you become a student of the game. And there are certain things that go hand in glove with being a student of the game. Theoretically, all students have to have an instructor or instructors. And for years we perceived that it wasn't good for a student to listen to more than one person because it got confusing. If you were starting out in college and you put yourself in the hands of more than one person, this guy told you this and this guy told you that. Personally, I guess I would modify that a little bit now. You can put yourself in the hands of more than one instructor if you do so carefully, because there are certain things at which certain people are better than other people. You might wish to take the advice of a particular breeder because they have the dogs that you most admire. But on the other hand, they might not do the best job of grooming and showing dogs, so you might also be talking to somebody else about that aspect of it. You can listen to more than one person if you do it with care. And the other thing that you have to understand is anything that you learn is a process of separating the wheat from the chaff. What has worked for me is probably not going to work exactly for any of you. So when you gather the information that you gather as a student of the game, you take everything in through here, you kind of run it through a mix master up here, and then you spit out what you can't use over there. The line of dogs that works for one person might not work for another person, because that person may be temperamentally unsuited to work with that line of dogs. The feed that works for one person might not work for someone else. The kenneling setup might not work. You've got to sift through the best of what's available and decide what will work for you. You also have to be an observer. You have to be a sifter. You have to be an observer. And you have to observe with some degree of intelligence. And you have to bring an awful lot of common sense to the party. God help us. Sometimes I'm appalled at the lack of common sense that some of us use. And yeah, me too, over the years. The lack of common sense that we use in our approach to breeding dogs. We just don't breed dogs the way we do other things like buy a car, buy a house, or whatever. We breed dogs on some kind of emotional high that constantly gets us in trouble. If there are 5 or 6 good stud dogs running around the country, we make up our mind that we're not going to breed to one of them. We're going to breed to the grandson that lives down the street because he's got that blood behind him and it's going to work fine. We don't use good common sense. You pick your instructors wisely. They not only won't mind you modifying their methods, they'll probably be glad to see you show some incentive on your own. The measure of a truly great teacher, people, like a truly great producer, is to have something to do with someone that does even better. That's the measure of a truly great teacher. When you get involved in dogs, forget the strange inspirations. You can have a heart in dogs, but don't let it lead you down a primrose path. Don't buy cheap dog food and then add 49 different kinds of vitamins trying to make up for them. People do these kind of things too. Don't do things on gut feeling. Think about what you're going to do. Don't get caught in the pedigree trap. If the dog is a good dog, be interested in what his breeding is. If he's not a good dog, you don't give a damn what his breeding is. His breeding won't make him a good dog if he's ugly. And finally, do your homework. If you do your homework, if you are a student of the game, if you use the things that have gotten better, the improvements, then one of these days when somebody writes a book about the complete collie, and you look down from up there with Murray and Ralph, you'll see your name in it. Now there's one more change that's taken place over the last 35 or so years that I probably know more about than any other. And I'll share it with you now because I think about it a great deal. The change, I think, that I know the most about is a change in yours truly. Spent a great many years learning all I could about breeding and showing and trying to do a very good job of it. It was very important to me. It was probably, in retrospect, at times too important. Because, as I've told people over and over again, I came to the show to beat you. To the point that I would converse if you wanted to come over to where I was grooming. But I came to the show to beat you. I could socialize with you after the show or at a club meeting or at my house or your house or whatever. And I've thought about this a lot because nowadays we don't show anymore. And I've thought about the successes we had and the fact that we tried to give credit where we felt credit was due to the people that helped us, the Van Dykes, Steve Fields, so on and so forth. But I also know very, very well that there were times when, flushed with success or disappointed by lack of it, yours truly probably came across as something less than what I wished to come across as. And I'm sorry about that. And maybe we can learn a lesson from it. I have. I guess as I think about some of the people here who I've known for so many years and who I just got done poking what I hope was a little innocent fun at, some of you out in the audience that I know and some that I don't know, I think about a song that's been very popular over the last few months. It was made popular by a gal named Bette Midler. And I think how apropos it is to use some of the words of that song to what you've all been to me. You have truly been the wind beneath my wings. And I thank you for it. Questions?
No, Mr. Horn, we appreciate you being here. I want to ask everyone in the room why you feel our breed has fallen out of the top 10. Why are setters and retrievers being chosen rather than our dogs for hunters and for companions?
I think, in my humble estimation, there are a number of reasons. It's a pretty complex situation. I think, in my view, collies are still one of the nicest dogs in the world to live with. Primarily because a collie's main aim in life is to please people. Okay? That's the greatest thing they've got going for them. They're one of the greatest family dogs in the world. If there's one that's close in my estimation, it's a golden retriever. But there are a couple things that we don't have going on today that we had going on some years ago for us. Number one, we don't have Lassie anymore. Okay, Lassie's coming back. Lassie's coming back, but Lassie hasn't been around. And make no mistake, that show sold a lot of puppies. Albert Payson-Terhune's books can still be had, but you know, we're now talking about something that's well back in the past. Albert Payson-Terhune's stories used to be in the Saturday Evening Post. Okay? We're also talking about a different kind of society, if you will. We're talking about a whole different makeup. We're talking about urban living and two working parent families. People who sometimes don't have time for any dog, or if they do, they don't have time for a long-coated one that takes some grooming. We're talking about people who are looking for a dog that has a macho image. The macho image brought Dobermans flying up. Now Dobermans are subsiding a little bit, and Rottweilers, you know. And for those of us that feel that we want something even a little bit tougher, we go out and get a couple pit bulls, maybe cross them with a timber wolf and see what happens. with a chow for calming influence. I mean, it is. It's a different kind of a world. You know, we've got an urbanized world, and people, somehow their values change, okay? The collie was the typical dog for kids and family. Well, I'm not even sure that family is a big issue with people anymore. Okay? I would find it infinitely easier to shed a Rottweiler if I was breaking up a family than to get rid of a collie whose heart I was going to break. A Rottweiler doesn't give a damn as long as you give him somebody to eat. I think we're a victim of a couple of very definite things like the Lassie series, but I think we're more insidiously a victim of changing times. And I'm not altogether sure that constantly being in the top 10 is the greatest thing in the world anyhow. If we were still breeding enough collies to keep us in the top 10, my God, we'd need 85,000 more rescue leagues than we've got. Anyone else? Dan? The hell you asking me questions for? You're going to get up here and give me all the answers in a couple minutes.
It's mostly a comment. I have to object a little bit to your apology because I think that attitude that you had of being very uncomfortable on losing is part of the factor that made you successful. I think of Steve Beal, you, Joyce, for instance. If you're not uncomfortable when you lose, you're not going to be motivated to improve. So I can't accept that apology for your actions. I thought they were normal and successful endeavor.
I always kind of liked, really, Gus Seegers told me something years ago. Anybody that knew Gus knew what a great loser he was. Gus used to say the worst thing that can happen to a serious breeder is to get the reputation for being a really good loser. Makes it too easy for the judge. Makes it too easy. There was no danger of that happening to me or Gus, by the way. I was thinking coming out here on the airplane, Ben, and I was thinking in conjunction with poking a little fun at you guys, and also at what people like you folks have meant to me over the years. Any success that we had or didn't have was not in spite of you guys, it was because of you. Because by what people like you were breeding and showing, you made us be better. And conversely, we probably made you be better. That's what competition is all about. If somebody comes out with a sweeper this year and kicks indelible choice in the head at the show under Carpenter, isn't my natural reaction, if I want to be competitive, is to think about how good a dog I've got to have to try to beat Sweeper next year? I'm just using him as an example, but that's what it's all about. And you know, if the Ruses look at their breeding program over the year, or Les, or Janet, or you guys, you know, we're all trying to get better. We're trying to get better for a lot of reasons. We're trying to get better because of that elusive little dream out there, which is to breed the perfect collie. But anyone that's successful in this game has some competitiveness in their soul. Okay? Got to be there somewhere. And that means that if this guy's got the hot dog this year, I want to come out and challenge him next year. So we were as good as you made us be. And I thank you for that. But good loser? Oh, you're right, Ben. I went with the damn loser. Joyce and I will still laugh about Columbus every once in a while. That was one of our high points, Joyce. We were in perfect agreement, though. God, I love it. Yes?
Do you think breeder judges of yesteryear were more experienced than they are today?
Question.
Breeder judges of yesteryear, were they more experienced than they are today? I don't necessarily think they were. we're coming at judging today, as I see it, from kind of a different point of view, and with all due respect to the American Kennel Club, which has done some wonderful things over the year, I have a very grave concern that the American Kennel Club has this picture in their sometimes foggy mentality. They want all judges to look alike, act alike, and judge alike. You know, that we're going to be cut out with little cookie cutters. Now, I really don't think that's a desirable situation. If that is the case, if that's what we truly want, then I guess with our modern technology, what I would submit is that we can have someone go around and take pictures and measurements and analyze all of these, feed them into a computer, and you guys can decide which dogs you want to enter, and the computer, rather than just send you back your entries, can send you back your entries with a marking on them so you know who's going to go first, second, and third. You can stay the hell home and save a lot of money. I think while there are times when you might question the validity of a judge's placing, his sanity, and a number of other factors, the kind of a game that we're talking about here has to offer a certain degree of variation, just like breeding offers a certain degree of variation. This person's interpretation of a written or pictorial standard or what have you is just that. It's an interpretation. I don't think that breeder judges years ago were that much different than breeder judges today. I do think in some cases all breed judges today are possibly, you gotta remember I haven't shown dogs since '76, I've just judged, but possibly less knowledgeable. And the thing that concerns me is the buzzword that I see today with regards to so many judges is, how many breeds can I get? How many groups can I do? That seems to be the in thing. You know, I keep sitting here and I just judge collies. And I keep thinking about maybe I ought to do shelters. But I haven't. I don't feel driven to do that. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to do that. There are very knowledgeable people who know enough about other breeds that they should feel perfectly comfortable. The ones who concern me are the ones who suddenly pop up like a mushroom after a summer rain. They have shown the foggiest interest in judging before, although they may have a spouse that did so. I get the impression that this is a nice way for the two of them to get a vacation together. Now, come on, give me a break. I mean, don't judge because it's the damn in thing to do. You judge because you really feel that you want to do it here. John, if I stare at you long enough, will your arm get tired? What do you got, John?
Do you think with AKC's ruling on a 5-year fee in dogs before you get a judge's license, do you feel that's long enough to qualify?
I don't think length of time has a bloody thing to do with it.
Would you like to repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
John's asking about the feeling on AKC saying you need to be in dogs 5 years before you put in for a judge's license. Is that the deal, John?
Yeah, you think it's long enough?
I don't think time should be the mitigating factor. I am a person that is results-oriented, not seniority-oriented. I think accomplishment should be a factor. I think champions, bred and or shown, etc., etc. I think matches and sweepstakes judged should be a factor. I've known people that have been in collies, may God love them, they're nice people, but they've been in collies forever, and I would never want them to judge a dog of mine. Because they are never going to be a good judge. They are perfectly lovable people. They are good for the breed, but they should never be a judge. So I think time in of itself is just a very small part of the whole picture, John. I would say we should have some kind of criterion for people's accomplishments. And I guess I'm prejudiced about that because I was 17 years doodle bugging around this thing, and we had won the CC of A, and Van Dyke was asking me, when the hell are you going to put in for your judge's license? My answer was, when I feel that I will be absolutely comfortable with doing it. And I think that's what everyone has to do. And for me, it doesn't, we get back to this business, what works for you might not work for me. I'm a little bit retarded, we all know this. But I approached it very methodically, okay? Spent X number of years breeding dogs and X number of years showing dogs, and I started nice and small, and I did matches, and then I did sweepstakes. And then I did go get the license, and the first show that I got, Collie Club of Northern California, I got 175 rough collies. Now, what in the name of God Almighty would I have done with 175 rough collies if I wasn't at least somewhere remotely near ready? That would have finished me. My first judgment assignment would have been my last. And I see an awful lot of people, they can't wait. Oh man, I want to be the judge. Don't be the judge till you're ready. Get you in a lot of trouble. Yes, oh, troublemaker.
Do you think we had more fun back then than we do now?
I don't know that I can speak for the people that have been showing since I stopped showing. I don't know what they consider fun. Based on my own observation, I would think that we had more fun. We were a little fruity, and might sound like a contradiction to some of you folks to say we had more fun when I've just finished a few minutes ago telling you that I was blood and guts out there to beat the hell out of you, okay? But you got to figure I'm standing in a show ring and Buddy's standing next to me, and I've got a dog in the ring named Hair, and he sprays something on my dog, and I say, what the hell's in the bottle? And he says, hair remover, and things like that. You go in the specials ring at the CC of A, you're soaking down the face on the other guy's dog while they're not looking, and little things like that. Yeah, I think we had a lot of fun. I think we were serious about what we were doing, but I think that we still had time to be goofy, okay? And I think, again, you get back to the fact that a lot of folks get in dogs today for what I feel is the weekend recreation scenario, rather than what can I do to really be an influence, what lessons do I have to learn? This is an age when people wish to be entertained, and we teach that to our children at a very young age. I used to go out and go fishing all day. My mother was glad to see me go. I'd go fishing all by myself. I'd sit down there at the creek, wouldn't get a damn bite, look at the birds, look at the sky. I could amuse myself. Kids nowadays don't do a terribly good job of amusing themselves. You got to buy them video games and all kinds of nifty little things that cost a lot of money because the TV set sucks them in and says, this is what you've got to have, kid, right? Well, those kids grow up to be grown-ups, and those grown-ups expect to be entertained too. And showing dogs is one way, I suppose, you can be entertained. Of course, what I think of showing dogs is a means of strictly entertainment. It's kind of like me playing the golf to relax, God damn it. But people do. They go out there and they're more concerned with doing something that, it gets them away from the world of reality. And there's an awful lot of gals that are in dogs, let's face it, it gets them away from diapers and pots and pans, the old man drinking beer and belching all over the house, the whole thing. gets them away from the world of reality for a couple days, okay? But that's just one aspect of it. Now, if that's all you want, I guess it's okay, because you're going to buy dogs from the serious breeders. You know, they need somebody to buy those dogs. But I think that probably the folks that fall into that category are also part of that big spectrum of dog fanciers that's around for about 3 or 4 years. That's the end of it. Yes, Leslie?
But George, don't you think a lot of it's been shows? We had to sit and look at each other, and we had to look at the dogs.
It was just like the guys traveling in trains to baseball games, and now they travel in planes. Murray's waving at me. If I don't give up the microphone, he won't be there when I get up in the sky. Pam, real quick.
George, come on, ladies and gentlemen. Finish it up.
It seems we always talk about the great dogs of yesterday. Are there fewer great dogs today?
I'll share with you real quickly one little thing. I thought about this. I think about a lot of things on planes to try to keep thinking about the plane going down. I'll share with you and the rest of the folks here, we talk about great dogs. And I'm one of the ones that bemoans the fact that there don't seem to be as many. Some years ago, I spoke at a seminar up in the New England area. After it was over, I came outside, and Steve Barger was out there doodle-bugging around with a blue bitch. Young blue bitch. I would guess she was maybe about 8 or 9 or 10 months old at the time. I kind of, looked at her and I thought, gee, she looks pretty nice. You know what blue bitch I'm talking about. Because you're a breezy. Nobody at that point of time, I don't think, could have foreseen where she was going. God knows, as far as the CC of A and winning the CC of A, she did things that no bitch ever done before. They're out there. You can pro and con forever whether there are less great ones or whether the overall level has moved up to absorb them. I think we need to be a little bit bolder in the way we breed if we want to have great ones. I think we breed too safe. And we can elaborate about that some other time, but I told you I don't want Murray to shut the pearly gates in my face. But there are still great ones out there. Sometimes you got to scratch harder to find them. Thank you.
As I think I told you before, when George talks, it's worth listening to. Don't you all agree?